The following is a special presentation of Tony Kurre Radio. Want the real story behind the sound bites and headlines? Let's find the facts. Remember, it's not a conspiracy theory if it's the truth. You are not paranoid or confused. You just need to know.
Welcome, everybody. It's time for another edition of Everything You Need to Know. I'm Kip Kiefer on this Monday, the day that we always come and start your week off with our latest bunch of messaging. Last week, appreciate everybody's feedback and a lot of reaction we've gotten to turning it over to one of my great partners, along with Tony Kurre, Gary Wilson, otherwise known as the legend of the Paul Feinbaum Show. He had a special interview last week here. I hope that you all were able to see it with a longtime Paul Feinbaum Show caller, I-Man, real name Rusty Garner, and Rusty's been unfortunately stricken with a very serious stage 4 level prostate cancer. Has been battling that bravely and really wanted to have the opportunity to sound the alert for men to completely get checked. This thing does not show any real symptoms. It can just develop. And a simple PSA test, a blood test, basically, just about once a year, maybe a couple times a year if you're getting to a little bit of an advanced stage, can save you from going through the terrible trauma that he has experienced in the treatment of this thing. Because, I mean, to really save you, they've got to almost do you in with the medications, and you get intensive radiation and chemotherapy and on those kind of things, and you've got to take all kinds of drugs. And the thing that really struck me about that podcast last week was him describing how some of the medicines they give you are so strong that then they have to start prescribing things to counter the effects of the medicine that they're treating you with. So the whole thing is nightmarish, and you just feel terrible for anybody going through that, particularly somebody we know and have worked with for a long time. And a very, very brutally honest exchange between the two of them. A lot of details that I didn't know. I learned a lot listening last week, so I hope you caught that. If not, it's certainly available on the TKR app, so check it out if you missed last week's Need to Know, because for so many of our listeners, it's something that we all needed to hear and needed to know. This week, I got kind of a grab bag. There's a lot going on this Monday around the country. As we speak, President Trump has Benjamin Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel, in the White House. The Trump administration has decided enough of this, all of this back and forth. Remember the old adage that we adhered to as a country for so many decades: you don't negotiate with terrorists. That was the rule. That was the hard and fast certainty, the clarity of the situation. I don't know in what universe this previous fake administration, and even the first 7 or 8 months of the Trump administration, they keep trying to reason and reach agreement with the Hamas terrorists that are in charge of the government on the Gaza area over the Palestinian population there. And, they keep, well, we're negotiating with Hamas. You don't negotiate with a terrorist group. They don't want to make a deal. They're terrorists. It's like the old, if you wake up and you've got some kind of poisonous snake in your bed, negotiation is really not the tactic that needs to take place, because the agenda for your intruder is not to reach a mutually beneficial deal. So with all that being said, This is finally the Trump administration laying out a 21-point plan to stop the hostilities there. The Israelis have been methodically crushing what remains of the Hamas leadership. They're down to like nobody. They've got a bunch of teenagers basically as their soldiers, if you will, fighting the Israeli army because the Israelis have pretty much wiped out the rest of them. And basically, with them still the controlling entity of the government, the Trump administration has come up with a plan to get them to immediately. They've still got hostages. Can you believe that? Imagine being one of those poor people. They were seized and taken hostage, over 400 of them. Now there supposedly is only maybe 50 or 60 still in their captivity, and the strong intelligence report indicate that at least half of those are probably no longer living. But the families want their family members back, regardless, even if they're deceased. They want their remains for proper burial and the closure of that situation. But if there are 20 or 25 people still alive in their captivity, I mean, it's mind-boggling. This all, of course, happened on October 7th of 2023 when the invading Hamas-led terrorist Palestinian group invaded a quiet area of Israel, really, residential, and of course some kind of music festival on a Saturday night, and just indiscriminately murdered over 1,400 Israeli citizens. What the bottom line is, who knows who they murdered? There's a pretty significant Muslim population in Israel. A lot of people don't realize that. Israel's a melting pot. It's not a 100% populated Jewish state. There are people living, a lot of Americans there. That's why so many Americans were taken hostage in that same situation, too. They were particularly prized. Not many Americans were killed in that raid that night. It was mostly Israelis. But once again, a few Muslims too, and that's going to come into play. It's something else I'm going to talk about in just a moment. But the bottom line is terrorists are intent to kill and create mayhem. They really don't bother with the detail of exactly who they're slaughtering. It's more the statement just to be ruthless and be bloodthirsty killers with no souls, no heart, no compassion for humanity whatsoever. That is the definition of what a terrorist is, and that's why you don't negotiate with them. Finally, we've got leadership in this country who gets the idea that, okay, here's how it's going to be, or we're just going to step aside and let Israel completely, just eliminate all of you Hamas people that are still surviving, and there's not many. They've already wiped out almost all of the upper leadership. They're down to their third or fourth string. Guys that were just operatives now are calling the shots. So this plan, if Netanyahu agrees, and there's some sticking points to it, because one of those is they're going to appoint like an interim government because Hamas can no longer have any involvement in any of the situation of being the governing body there. But there's some objectionable language in the Trump plan that refers to Palestinian leadership, which is what got him in this problem in the first place, because the Palestinian leadership, quote unquote, when Yasser Arafat, who was the head of the Palestinians for so many years, when he passed away, there was a vacuum at the top, and that's what allowed the Hamas terrorists to seize control. Now, one misnomer that you need to know, and that's what this show's all about, because the media doesn't tell you this very often. You hear, particularly in the sympathetic pro-Palestinian legacy media, which is basically just the voice of this leftist movement in this country, anti-Semitic, anti-Jewish, etc. You always hear the poor Palestinian people are suffering because the Israelis are so brutal and they're just indiscriminately murdering poor Palestinians, and the Hamas leadership, is not doing anything to help them. Well, of course they don't. The Hamas leadership could care less about the Palestinian citizens. They've used them as human shields for years. This is not about the poor Palestinian people because they are so anti-Israel that if you asked a man on the street before all this happened, let's say on October 5th of 2023, you would have gotten almost 100% support from the people on the street walking around in Gaza, that they were all for the Hamas government and they completely supported their policies and whatnot. And that position. So the poor innocent Palestinians are the people that put these animals in charge, and I don't usually call human beings that, but this Hamas group, just like Hezbollah, who Israel now has almost completely vanquished on their other border, and the Iranians have not fared very well with the American intervention in terms of being the sponsors of both of these groups, intent on destroying Israel and eliminating the Jewish state through this global Holocaust #2, and so far the rest of the world has rallied. And what you've really seen as a result of the Trump leadership is him going to all of these other nations that just want prosperity and economic opportunity and modernization of this ancient, ridiculous, antiquated attitude based on these hardcore Islamic views from, literally 8-9 centuries ago, that they just regard as the letter of the law. It's the most ridiculous thing in the world. If you look at American pro-Palestinian protests, all these young women out there screaming at the top of their lungs anti-Israel slogans and pro-Palestinian support. They are basically throwing their hat in the ring of support for people that believe that women should not have any rights whatsoever. Women shouldn't even be educated. Women should just be completely subservient to their men because that's what the ancients of the Islamic movement, all the way back to Muhammad and the Quran, that's what they dictate. So they are advocating for groups that consider them non-human beings. It's the most ridiculous thing ever, and it just goes to show you how we haven't had education in this country for so long. We've had indoctrination instead. We have brainwashed a whole generation of young people to believe all of this just complete crap, that Israel is the oppressor here, and that the poor Palestinian people, under this brutal, archaic, antiquated leadership of people that are basing their doctrine on religious practice from 9 centuries ago, it defies any logical thinking person to see how they could have gained so much support on college campuses and with young Americans. And somebody somewhere needs to deprogram these poor folks, because in these liberal institutions, and a lot of these are blue-blooded kids too that come from privileged backgrounds. If you're going to Harvard or Brown or Yale or Columbia or whatever, you're not from the backwoods. These are not people with low IQs or lack of privilege in life. These are people that minds have been poisoned with all wrong information, all false information and false narratives. And it's just terrible to think that we've got a whole generation of people on this elite level that consider themselves somehow superior to the rest of us, that have all these warped ideas and are embracing this entire leftist movement. The fact that Kami Mandami is about to be elected mayor of New York City, the world's leading financial backbone of modern day life for the last 200 years, and a communist is getting ready to be elected mayor there. Kami Mamdani is going to be an absolute disaster because it is a proven fact. Anybody who knows anything about the history of the world, if you have almighty government that controls everything from real estate to housing to business production, all of Mondami's promises are that it's going to be this great thing where everybody's going to be holding hands singing Kumbaya because we're all going to be equal, and the only thing we have to do to get all this free stuff and all these great economic opportunities for the downtrodden is to tax the rich more. Now think about that. New York already has the highest taxation scale in the country, and people that have been there and have been really pushed to the point of being fed up have left. The fleeing from New York is considerable, and if this guy wins and starts imposing higher corporate taxes, corporations are going to leave. It's happening in California. They're relocating in Tennessee. I told you a couple of weeks ago about In-N-Out Burger, multi-million-dollar company on the West Coast or the western part of the United States that now has bailed out of California because of the ridiculous taxation, and they are relocating in Tennessee. So it's the Clampetts in reverse. Instead of going to Beverly, they're fleeing from Beverly and going in the opposite direction back to Tennessee, just like the Clampetts. So it's really an interesting dynamic that's happening. It doesn't work when you try to collect money from producers. Producers don't cooperate because producers have done the work and put forth the diligence to make their fortunes, and they are not in the habit of handing it over for people that are not productive, that have been poisoned to believe that the government is in charge of supporting them. And this country is the best in the world as far as opportunities for everyone. Everybody has access to the American dream. You can go as far as your brains and your determination and your sense of instincts can take you, and that is that is unique to this country. There's other pockets of the world where you might have similar opportunities, but not in the scope and size of this country, where the gains and the success you can attain is limitless, based on life is still kind of a dice roll. You have to get some breaks along the way. You have to take advantage of the opportunities that are presented to you, but it's still the best system in the world. And any American who's comfortable watching this leftist movement try to hijack our way of life, right down to usurping our own Constitution, the lifeblood of our republic, if you're not disturbed by that, you need to do some deep soul searching and get some intervention from somebody like Need to Know that can get you back on the right path. Because don't curse this country, don't put down this country, and don't buy the rotten banana that America is evil and corrupt and not fair to all. It's just not true. This is the country that you want to be in, and you should kiss the ground every day you wake up that you were born in the greatest country civilization has ever produced. Are there warts? Are there mistakes? Are there blemishes along the way? You bet your bottom dollar there are. But that's true of any kind of developing situation, particularly one this audacious, that had this idea of individual liberty and freedom for all, to promote your opportunity to live the most successful life you can possibly lead, and a perfect spot to raise your family. And it's great to see the movement back to spirituality, back to God, back to country, back to family. That's the three basic, absolute foundational pillars of this society we call the United States of America. Family, God, country. That is the big three. That's the trifecta. And if you're hitting that, you are right on target. Quickly wanted to mention more shootings over the last couple days in this country. It's just getting to be epidemic in proportion. These last two over the weekend, one in South Carolina, the other in Michigan. One was an attack, and just to show you the diversity of this whole scourge that we're living under right now. One of them was at a bar, a very popular night spot in Southtown, South Carolina, where a guy on a boat rolled up, and this was a waterfront night spot packed with people. Just started firing, indiscriminately into the building from his boat. People didn't even know where the shots were coming from. There was mass panic. There's 3 or 4 dead from that. Just out on a Saturday night at a popular night spot. This guy is a former military veteran. I think he's 40 years old. He supposedly has had signs of mental illness. He is being treated for PTSD from whatever military conflicts he was in. So who knows? This sounds like somebody who's kind of gone off the deep end, and it's tragic. But it's just another example. And the one yesterday, even more heinous, another military veteran. So that's a little bit of a disturbing situation, and it speaks volumes. Are we doing enough for people that have served our country in uniform when they come back? If they're not adjusting properly, is the system set up to really try and do the best they can to ensure that these people are cared for and not subject to causing problems with mental illness? So the system needs to be a lot more proactive in intervening in situations where there are red flags, because we have way too many of these kind of circumstances. He attacked a Mormon church Sunday during services yesterday. Not only fired a bunch of rounds of live ammunition into the church filled with families worshiping on a Sunday, but then had incendiary materials and lit the building on fire. And it actually burned to the ground. The police responded right away. Within 8 minutes of all of this starting, they had neutralized the suspect, as they call it, basically shot him dead, thank God. But there's at least 4 or 5 dead there from the shootings, and now they're going through the rubble. There are people unaccounted for. I'm really horrified to think that there might be multiple more victims in the debris there. But what a terrible thing. Attacks on religious institutions. We had the shooter in Minnesota last month who just fired on a Catholic school mass on an early morning, just shooting through the glass windows, and killed a couple of students and injured some more. Attacks on churches, I mean that is as heinous as it gets, and there's way too much of that going on, and we've got to get to the root causes of it. And of course, we had the ICE shooting. That's another subject. How come there's not outrage by all factions of society on this? For years and years, if anybody shot at or killed a police officer, the outrage was just unbelievable. Not only with the communities, but with the police themselves. These people that are now the targets of these gunmen who are protesting the ICE immigration customs enforcement group, who is out doing the job they're hired to do, which is removing illegal aliens from our midst, people that are not qualified to be in the country, did not go through the legal process, many of whom had temporary status and just stick around and stay, many who crossed the wide open borders into this country and basically just disappeared into all kind of corners of society. These people are just doing their job. They are law enforcement officers, customs, immigration, or excuse me, I got it backwards. Immigration, customs, enforcement. These are police officers. These are federal law enforcement officers, and they're being indiscriminately shot at and identified. Last week, a California-based ICE agent was followed home secretly by three women who immediately recorded his address, took pictures of him with a telephoto lens, put his images and his address all over social media, encouraging people to go and harass him and his family. And you know what that leads to? Somebody takes that to the next level and brings a weapon, and next thing you know, you've got another horrible tragedy. I mean, this whole deal of identifying these officers and making them targets for doing their job in law enforcement. Can you imagine the reaction from a local police force like New York or Atlanta or just pick a city, St. Louis, whose officers are targeted like this? It would be a national just uproar. But because these people are federal agents and are removing illegals from the country, that is this just heart on your sleeve issue. And it gets back to one simple fact: these are law enforcement officers doing their job. It's not up to them. They're not going out and going, okay, I'm going to take it on. They're not bounty hunters. These people are licensed, recognized, sworn law enforcement officers. And Americans don't seem to care that this faction of society is declaring war on them for doing their job. It's just unconscionable. This gunman in Dallas, I had a whole bunch of stuff written about how these people don't deserve to live, these agents. But here's the thing, going back to the point I made about Hamas earlier. This guy goes there. He's even put in his notes that they found after he cowardly killed himself when the police were closing in. This guy put in his notes that I'm going to attack this ICE detention center. I'm going to try to get as many ICE personnel agents as I can. And he says, and I'm sorry if there's collateral damage. Collateral damage means anybody who happens to be walking along on the street at that time, in front of this place, anybody who is in the area that might interfere with his plan, or in this case, anybody who was in the van that he shot up like it was a video game, and this guy had played like hours and hours of all these hardcore violent video games just to poison his mind and make him indifferent to actual human life. But this guy just hailed bullets all in, and the two people killed in that shooting and the other one seriously injured were detainees. These were people that ICE had picked up. Isn't this the stand this guy's taken, that it's illicit for our agents to be taking illegals out of the country? But to show his displeasure with that, he actually kills two of those people. I think they probably would have voted for deportation instead of execution from the hands of this deranged nutball, because the bottom line is somebody intent on killing and mayhem, they really don't care who they kill. It's not for the cause. It's because they have this just non-human impulse to make themselves notable by creating the worst destruction possible. Attacks on churches, attacks on children, that is the areas of society that are most vulnerable, and that's what these cowards a lot of times choose to do. This guy didn't walk up and start a gun battle. He was on a roof out of sight, just firing, just like these assailants this weekend at the church and the bar, firing indiscriminately because they don't have the guts to go look anybody in the eye and do this. It's just an epidemic in our country that's got to come to a stop, and it has to come to a stop now. One other final thought on law enforcement. We live in a country where laws are on the books. The Constitution, which is the basis of all of our attempts at a organized and civil and just society, the Constitution spells out what is allowed and what is not. there are things called constitutional amendments. If you don't like something in the Constitution, the founding fathers left you a formula where you could fix that. You get enough people on board with the same idea, and you can make a constitutional amendment. We've got a whole slew of them over the 250 years we've been around. And also laws that get passed on the book, both state, federal, local, whatever you want to call it. Those laws are there and they are subject to change in our representative form of government. You have to vote for the people that believe as you do and have them go to their respective places, whether it's your state capital, your county seat, or the federal government in the Senate or the House or even the presidency, and vote for people that think as you do and can change the laws if you don't like them. But as long as they're in the Constitution, as long as they're on the books, as long as they're the law of the land, the law of your state, or the law of your community, those laws are on the books and they need to be enforced. And there's no picking and choosing. This isn't multiple choice. You can go, yeah, I like this law. This one sucks. I'm not doing this. That's not the way it works. We can change laws, but we don't change them by ignoring them, and we sure as hell don't change anything except for the balance and sanity of our society if our way of expressing our displeasure for laws and the enforcement of those rules and regulations and laws is to take a gun and shoot innocent people who have nothing to do with it. And I include ICE officers, which again are law enforcement officers doing their job, that they take an oath and swear to uphold the Constitution of the United States. And for that, they are targeted for death because they're out pursuing their careers and doing what they signed up to do. That doesn't make them evil. It doesn't make them, I mean, some of these people might have some of the same inclinations that maybe they don't want to go out and get a guy that's been a solid member of the community for a long time. Like this ridiculous story over the weekend of the school superintendent in a county of Iowa is in this country illegally. It's an illegal alien. And when that came to light, that person armed the school superintendent, tried to elude law enforcement officers that were coming to take her away. It's an entire theater of absurdity going on, but somebody's got to step up and make the case that again, you don't put people on the firing line for doing their job and executing their sworn duties. All of the presence of all of these so many criminal illegal aliens that need to be removed from this country immediately. Anybody who disagrees with that just doesn't have a functioning brain. And even the people here that seemingly have assimilated into society, if they haven't done it properly, they're violating the law. If you don't like the law, change it. But they are violators of the law, and there's no exceptions, there's no buts, there's no ifs, there's no ands, there's no candy at the end of the day. If you're violating the law, you're violating the law, and you're subject to discipline. And that's the way it works in an orderly rule of law society. You can't pick and choose that by your ideology. And the bottom line is the reason there's so many of these people in our country is because this fake administration previous to the current one changed everything. They were bringing in all these people by the millions, and they were issuing them Social Security numbers after just being in the country for a couple of months. Completely illegal what they did. That allowed a lot of these people to get driver's licenses and to get voting registration. And at the end of the day, folks, that was the plan. This was not compassionate. This was not opening our borders to our beleaguered people. These people were showing up with new clothes and cell phones. They were being brought in here on purpose by this leftist movement to try and change the variety of people who make the decisions in our government through representation and voting. There's an estimated 3 million of them that are in this country illegally that still, to right now, have Social Security numbers, which was a blatant violation of the law, and anybody participating in that scam needs to be charged and jailed, because that is a blatant slap in the face to everybody who stands up for what America is founded on and all the principles set forth in our Constitution. So, with that, I will leave you and promise to come back next Monday with more thoughts. Let's watch all the things that are unfolding in the country. Let's hope and pray to God that this ridiculous conflict that's been going on between the Israelis and the Palestinians, pretty much the entire time Israel has been recognized as a sovereign nation, created in the 1940s after World War II. It's time for the Middle East to get back to business. And the most encouraging thing is, in the Middle East, you've got a lot of countries now that are on board saying, enough of this. We need to get into the modern world and get away from the fact that it's not the 12th century anymore. Kip Kiefer on the TKR network. Thanks for tuning in to Need to Know. We will be back next week with more. Have a blessed week, everybody. God bless you and God bless America.
This has been a special presentation of Tony Kurre Radio.